With the GOP presidential primaries fast approaching, Republican voters need to decide who they want to represent them versus the crypt keeper currently guarding the Oval Office. The frontrunner is the former 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. However, there's another candidate on the bench that's a far superior fit for the job. His name is Vivek Ramaswamy, and in this video, we'll outline 5 definitive reasons why. Reason number 1 is the most obvious: age. Vivek is just entering his prime at 38, whereas Trump is nearing his expiration date at 77. The truth is, Trump is simply not the same man he was 40 years ago. Father Time stands still for no one, and for a party that claims to believe in biological realities, we need to acknowledge that after a certain point, physical and cognitive abilities decline dramatically. Just look at our current commander-in-chief, who's lost the ability to walk and speak.
Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah.
And so when we're evaluating who we want to take the mantle of the most important job in the world, we need someone in prime condition to deal with the myriad of complex issues our country's facing. The type that can work 18-hour days, 7 days a week, who's at his mental peak, and with endless energy and a fire in his belly. Reason number 2 is resume. Both are political outsiders who've achieved the pinnacles of success, but a side-by-side comparison reveals stark differences. Both attended elite private high schools, but Vivek graduated top of his class. Trump went on to Fordham, a solid mid-tier college, and then transferred to UPenn. Vivek, on the other hand, went to one of the most competitive schools in the nation and finished near the top of his class. After college, both would go on to accomplish goal after goal in the business world, but only Vivek was self-made and built multiple billion-dollar businesses from scratch. Perhaps the most critical distinction is that Vivek also attended one of the best law schools in the nation. He didn't end up practicing law, but the legal knowledge he acquired during his time at New Haven will be an invaluable tool as president. Everything the president does is tightly constrained by the Constitution and various federal laws and legal precedents. One of the greatest impediments to Trump's effectiveness was that he relied on swamp creatures to advise him on what he could or could not do.
Birthright citizenship is an issue that's a lot of people have raised as part of the problem. People come here, they have a baby just so they can stay. You've said that you will end it by executive order if put back in the White House, but putting aside the legal questions around whether that's possible.
Some people say you can't do that.
Some people say you can't, some people say you can, but you made this promise back in 2016 and then you didn't do it once elected. And then as president, you kept saying you were gonna sign an executive order on this and you didn't. So why should people believe you now?
Because the lawyers didn't want me to do it, because the lawyers were saying you have to go through a whole big thing all over the country. You need votes of every state and everything else.
But Vivek's legal foundation gives him the ability to roll up his sleeves and slosh through the mud himself.
So if you have entered this country illegally with the intention of using it, having a child here as a basis for establishing citizenship in this country, that is not something the 14th Amendment was designed to protect against. And Stuart, if you want to get on the legal scholarship side of this, a kid of diplomats who's born here definitely does not qualify for birthright citizenship because there are qualifiers in the 14th Amendment. It says you have to be subject to the laws and jurisdiction thereof. And so I'm highlighting previously unexplored questions because we're facing a border crisis. There are thousands, tens of thousands of illegal migrants crossing the southern border every day. Even the Democrat mayor of the city we're in right now, New York City, claiming that this will destroy New York City and cities across this country. We can't sit by and watch passively. I think we have to treat people with respect, with dignity, but we're a nation founded on the rule of law. That means that if you come here illegally and have kids, birthright citizenship should not extend to the kids of illegal immigrants in this country.
Reason number 3 is baggage. Ever since Trump strolled down that escalator in 2015, he's been the target of non-stop attacks and vitriol. Some of this was self-inflicted.
Whoa.
I did try and fuck her. She was married.
It's huge news, Sarah.
You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab him by the pussy.
Donald Trump described it as locker room talk and apologized. But it was damaging. 2 weeks later, Stormy Daniels was offered hush money of $130,000 from Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen.
These incidents may seem trivial and overblown, but whether justified or not, the reality is there's a swath of the population that will eternally despise this man for his messy past.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama
Trump has also been embroiled in a myriad of more serious controversies over the years, from the Russian collusion hoax to 2 impeachments, and now multiple federal and state indictments. Yes, many, if not all of these attacks have been baseless, but the machine simply will not stop until he's completely out of the political arena. If Trump's reelected, he'll continue to be hampered by external attacks, which will drag on his agenda. On the other hand, although not much is known about Vivek's personal life, it seems doubtful that he regularly hangs out with porn stars or pedophiles. He's taken the unprecedented step of releasing 20 years of his tax returns. He's been in the public eye since his 20s, and he comes across as someone that's very measured and deliberate, which is a contrast to Trump's more loose and reckless style that has led to many of his troubles.
He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came out. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. As president, I could have did less. Now I can't, but this is
now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
This contrast in baggage leads us to our fourth point, which is that Vivek has a much stronger chance of unifying our deeply divided country. Vivek's goal is to deliver a 1984-style landslide victory in the general election. This may seem like meaningless political hype, but is actually a critical component of his vision. If you want to execute an ambitious political agenda, having widespread public support is essential to help push through legislation and deter political attacks. Now, could Trump beat Biden? Yes, but so could a ripe potato. The more important question is whether Trump can deliver a moral mandate, and the answer is definitively no. Vivek, on the other hand, has a unique opportunity to form a coalition of younger voters, minorities, independents, and even highbrow elitists that recoil at the very sight of the orange man. The fifth and final reason to vote for Vivek over Trump is the most important. He's in a much better position to actually see through the America First agenda. On the surface, both candidates share many of the same policy positions, but Trump already had his shot and ultimately failed to deliver on a number of fronts. The centerpiece of Trump's campaign in 2016 was building the wall and halting illegal immigration, but the wall was never completed. Border encounters actually spiked before COVID, and his administration even proposed giving amnesty to millions of illegal aliens. Yes, Trump did face resistance on this front, but he also neglected to take steps that the president has unilateral authority over, such as utilizing military resources at the border, which Vivek has said he'll do, among other measures. Another promise of the Trump campaign was to drain the swamp. The federal employee count increased during Trump's tenure, in part because he relied on the advice of career politicians. Vivek has vowed to go even further by slashing the federal workforce by 75%, a topic he's done homework on himself. And instead of just swapping out one puppet for another, Vivek plans to shut agencies down. Furthermore, the federal deficit also increased dramatically under Trump's watch, driven by a number of wasteful spending bills that he himself signed. Trump claims to be a staunch proponent of justice and law and order, but he declined to deliver pardons for those that were abused by our legal system, such as Julian Assange and nonviolent January 6 protesters. Vivek will pardon them on day one. Trump also pushed for the early release of criminals at the behest of austere scholar Kim Kardashian, while at the same time he refused to end affirmative action or to release classified information of public importance, such as the JFK assassination files and the Epstein list.
And so a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people.
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well, whatever it is.
In contrast, Vivek will rescind affirmative action at the federal level and provide unprecedented transparency when in office.
So we will publish the Jeffrey Epstein client list. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I think that that's part of a broader pattern of just restoring and rebuilding trust in this country. Right? If I see how there's some Republicans on there that need protection, nope. Or think about the people who we spent millions of dollars of congressional hush money taxpayer money used to settle sexual assault allegations for members of Congress. It's a secret list. Why? If our money's being spent to do it, let's just see it. Roll the log over. Let's see what crawls out.
Trump supported a number of gun control proposals.
That is why I have called for red flag laws, also known as extreme risk protection. You have to look at the age of 21 for certain types of weapons. I mean, some people aren't going to like that, but you're going to have to look at that very seriously. But you have to be very, very powerful on background checks. Don't be shy. Very strong on mentally ill. You have to be very, very strong on that. And don't worry about bump stock, we're getting rid of it.
In the possession
or
of that
might
individual.
take the firearms first and then go to court, because that's another system. Because a lot of times by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process second.
Vivek, on the other hand, is a Second Amendment absolutist.
I love America, but I don't understand this gun thing. Why do we need the Second Amendment? Why do we need guns in America? Because that's what I get a lot from the people that I know who are immigrants who come here. They love the country, but they say, why the Second Amendment?
So it's interesting because I think immigrants who come from other democratic nations may be different than immigrants who come from places like Iran, or China or other despotic regimes. Here's why. China and Iran. So I brought them up earlier. Let's use those two examples. Both countries actually, on paper, even in their constitutions, enumerate the same freedoms we have in our Bill of Rights, except the Second Amendment. So the Second Amendment is actually the amendment that puts the teeth into all of the other ones. I went to the NRA meeting and, the guy was trying to quiz me. He says, well, what does AR-15 stand for? I said, it stands for freedom, actually. That's what it stands for. And you know what? When the British in the American Revolution, where do they want to come? Where the guns and bullets were kept. Because they understand that would have been the source of freedom. Black Americans, after the Civil War. To go what Tani said before the Civil War, after the Civil War, a lot of the main laws that were passed during the so-called Reconstruction era that stopped Black Americans from securing the freedoms that we fought a Civil War to actually secure were the first wave of anti-gun laws that stopped Black Americans from owning guns. So whether it's Iran, whether it's China, whether it's even our own nation at our less proud points in our history, we actually need to provide a backstop, for all of the other rights that are written on a piece of paper. What allows us to secure those rights in real life? The way I explain it to people is it's like the equivalent of when the Cold War, we had this concept of mutually assured destruction, right? The US and Soviet Union would never go to war because each side knew they were subject to destruction by the other. And so that actually gave us the peace that kept the war cold rather than hot. It makes some people uncomfortable when I say this, but I think it's the true spirit of the Second Amendment. That's what happens when you have a relationship between a government and its people. People of sheep breed a government of wolves. That's what the Second Amendment's about.
Trump has even diminished what is perhaps his greatest single accomplishment of appointing justices that overturned Roe v. Wade. Now, he seemingly reversed course on that monumental decision by saying that he's open to signing federal legislation that would supersede state laws, such as the heartbeat bill.
If a federal ban landed on your desk, if you were reelected, would you sign it at 15?
Are you talking about a complete ban?
A ban at 15 weeks.
Well, people are starting to think of 15 weeks. That seems to be a number that people are talking about right now.
Would you sign that?
I would sit down with both sides and I'd negotiate something, and we'll end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years. I'm not going to say I would or I wouldn't. I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that
I think what he did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake.
On the other hand, Vivek has said that he would not disturb the Supreme Court's ruling in Dobbs based on constitutional principle.
So I am unapologetically pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception and that unborn life is life. This is important to me. I am personally supporting efforts here in Ohio on issue number 1, reaching the ballot soon. I went to Iowa recently on the special day that they signed the 6-week legislation. That day, it was important to me. I flew there to be there to celebrate that occasion. I think Roe was wrongly decided.
one of the most important things that Trump gave us was a Supreme Court that in turn delivered Dobbs, overturning Roe. I'm a strict constitutionalist. I'm an originalist when it comes to the Constitution. That is why I was a staunch, since law school onward, staunch constitutional opponent of Roe versus Wade on principled grounds. I think that on principled grounds, and on the grounds both of the Constitution as well as looking at what over the next 30 years is going to prevent the loss of as many unborn children as possible, I actually think this is best driven by the states. The moment that we federalize this issue, the same shoe will fit the other foot. And I think we need to think this through. I know this is a little bit of a minority perspective in the pro-life movement, though other senators and congressmen who are some of the staunchest pro-life advocates agree with me and have shaped my thinking on this. Here's the reality. There's something called preemption. Preemption, it's a supremacy clause in the Constitution that says that federal laws preempt state laws. Right now, we've adopted correctly on the back of Dobbs the position that the federal government should have nothing to do with this. This is an issue for the states, and if a state wants to ban abortion, absolutely it can, it should, and many are already taking bold and proper steps in that direction. Here's the problem, though. Once we federalize that issue, the moment the Democrats then pass a piece of legislation that preempts all of those state laws, more babies will die over the next 30 years, I believe. More unborn children will die over the next 30 years. If we cross the Rubicon of turning this into an issue that opens itself up to federal preemption of the great laws that are hopefully spreading across this country from Iowa to Ohio. So I think it's really important to think for the long run here. We have the same objective, but I think it's really important that we pause to think about the tactics before we do something we regret.
Last but not least, to this day, Trump still touts the massive success of Operation Warp Speed and refuses to accept any responsibility for federal overreach during the COVID era, where he sheepishly followed the lead of Lord Anthony Fauci. Now, all of this being said, we would be remiss if we didn't recognize the fact that Trump did some great things for this country. He kept us out of wars, he spurred on a revival of our economy, and he opened the eyes of many to the flagrant corruption of the media and the deep state. But we are in an especially precarious moment in our nation's history, so we as citizens have a duty to carefully examine the facts and reality with clear eyes. The presidency isn't about who's more entertaining, or who you personally like, or who can own more libs. We need a leader that has the energy, resume, and ability to take America first to the next level. So now is the time for Trump to gracefully bow out of politics, enjoy his retirement, and hand over the reins to the next generation.